Did you tip up? Which one? All right. Okay. Hey guys, it is Mission Discover, and welcome back to another episode of The Learning Curve. And in today's episode, I'll be joining Anyfin as possible for my first ever ice fishing trip. Alrighty, Bob and I actually just wrapped up the ice fishing session, but before I roll that footage, I want to go over the gear that I brought with me so that as I make commentary on it throughout the video, you guys know what you're looking at. The setup I have in front of me isn't very fancy, but it's not really lacking anything either. I didn't spend a ton of money to get this stuff, but it's also not the top of the line stuff. I think for a brand new ice fisherman, this is a pretty good place to start. So I'll show you what I have. First of all, I do have an auger. This is an 8-inch auger by StrikeMaster. And to go along with that for clearing the holes, I do have this scoop. This is by Celsius ice fishing gear. I also have a medium light 26-inch ice fishing combo. This is the 13 Fishing Heat Wave. It's pretty cheap. I have this rigged up with 6-pound fluorocarbon and a spring tip bite indicator by Celsius. I have 3 basic wooden tip-ups by Celsius as well. And as my safety equipment, I have these ice spikes. I don't remember the brand, but I'll pop it up right here. These are the retractable kind, so they're not spiky just in their base form, but they have this spring-loaded sheath on the outside, so that when you stab it into the ice, it pushes away and exposes that sharp point. And these will remain around my neck throughout the entirety of the trip. And then this definitely isn't necessary, especially for a first timer, but I do already own a Garmin Striker 4 and it came with the ice fishing kit, so I do have that as well. For attire, I will be wearing some gloves. These have little finger holes so I can expose my fingers and tie knots without taking the gloves off if I want to. I'm wearing basic snow pants to keep my knees dry when kneeling on the ice, and my Carhartt jacket just to keep me warm. I also have a hat. And then I have boots with these attachable ice cleats, also from Celsius. These are super cheap and should hopefully keep me from slipping on the ice. I do not have an ice fishing sled. I'm just going to be carrying everything in a 5-gallon bucket, and this will also serve as my seat. And then for tackle, I went with the smallest tackle bag I have, just trying to keep it light and keep to the bare minimum essentials. With all that being said, I showed you all my gear. Let's get out on the ice and see how all this performs and see what we learn about the actual process of ice fishing. All right, here's the lake. I see Bob out there. We're about to take my first ever step out on the ice for ice fishing. I'm fairly confident it'll hold me. I'm still going to be pretty cautious. I'll talk about why I'm confident in a second. There you go. We are on a lake. I have my ice picks on. I'll talk about those in a second as well. Just to make sure we're being extra safe. I have my arms out, so if I happened to go through, my head wouldn't go under. All safe practices. I am here. All right, so to talk about my first ever lesson for ice fishing, it's not really a lesson, it's kind of just common sense. And that is the fact that if you're a beginner to something like ice fishing, where there's the possibility that, you know, you go through the ice and, you know, there've been some pretty serious accidents, people have lost their life. Safety is of utmost concern. And as a beginner, I don't think you should ever be the first person to go out on a body of water. A lot of the people like Bob who have been doing this for a long time are more comfortable on some less than ideal ice, 3 inches, that sort of thing, and they'll kind of brave it and use their experience to figure it out. But as a beginner, that's not something you should be doing. Bob has already been out on this lake a couple times throughout this ice fishing season. He knows where the ice is, he knows that it's safe, and I'm out here with him to make sure that I maintain my safety. It's also a good idea to just have a buddy with you. I wasn't going to end up being out here unless someone was out here with me, but since Bob's here, we're out here and we're gonna give it a shot. All right, so similar to my backpacking video, my backpacking learning curve video, a lot of this video is going to be figuring out just some basic techniques, some basic stuff to get yourself started, as well as figuring out what gear is actually essential for someone going out there and doing this stuff for the first time. One of the things that I'm pretty sure is going to be essential is the auger. Obviously you could do things like use a hatchet, but the auger is just such a good investment. You can find them for cheap on Facebook Marketplace, like I did with this one. I sharpened up the blades last night, and I'm going to drill my first ever ice hole, kind of in the same region as Bob. We're not going to get too close just for safety's sake, but put it a couple feet away from him. Do you think it'd be better to kind of go closer to the weeds or closer to the middle if you had to bet?
These weeds here, it's like 3 foot of water.
Okay.
So ideally, I think the edges, like that's where they are. They're on the edges.
So maybe back there a ways?
Yeah, where those holes are already gone. I know who dug those. He knows the fish here.
All right. So I'll go this way and try a hole right about here or so. Give it a shot. I'm not super accustomed to how the ice auger works, but I'm gonna try it, I suppose. I ended up having a really difficult time drilling a hole through the ice with my auger. I was inexperienced with the whole technique. I kept getting my ice picks wrapped around the handle, and my auger simply did not want to bite into the ice. Turns out, however, that the auger not biting into the ice was not due to my poor technique. This auger just kind of stinks. On my second trip out on the ice with Anyfin Is Possible, which you guys will see shortly, Bob brought out his 7-inch auger, and I was able to rip through holes in about a minute, whereas holes with this 8-inch auger took me about 6 minutes apiece. Bob said he had the same sort of issues with his StrikeMaster 8-inch auger, so maybe stay away from that one. But as you'll see during my next hole, there are some techniques to make do even if you have a crappy auger. Oh, I hit water.
He's in water. He's got a hole.
Oh my gosh. All right, let's clean this thing out.
For the kids' sake, I usually just make everything boneless, skinless.
Here, ready? I'll put my scoop in underneath. It's in up to here. I have that much ice. That's good. Bob is over there and he has about 2 inches less than I do. All right, Garmin's turned on. Bob is not using a fish finder, so we're gonna see if this does anything for us, helps us at all. It says I'm only 2 feet here. Gonna have to drill another hole, aren't I?
Yeah.
Bob supplied me some baby crawlers. I'm gonna leave a tip up in this hole and go drill a hole in a little bit deeper water. I've got these with 10-pound mono, full split shot rig, really basic. Get this worm on there, drop it down in there. All right, that's ready to go. I'm gonna unfortunately have to go drill another hole. Whether you're struggling with technique or like me, just have a crappy auger, sometimes you might struggle to drill a hole through the ice. So here are a couple techniques I figured out. First of all, to get it started, it helps to have it on a little bit of an angle so the edges of those blades really dig in and get a divot started. It also really helps to get your entire elbow and arm over top of the auger to press down with full force, kind of like a bench press, and that helps those blades dig into the ice. And finally, if it feels like it's bottoming out partway through, flattening off and just not digging in, it may help to change your angle of attack and drill from a different side. It may lead to you doing this weird little hokey pokey spin type thing, but if it gets you through the ice, then that's all that matters. Bring the fish finder over, get working with the normal rod. Still slip a little bit, even with my ice cleats on. That is one of the other things. I mean, there's snow on the ice, so you could probably make do, but ice cleats in general in the winter are useful, but I feel like immediately, right off the bat, I'm almost not even slipping at all. Ice cleats are super cheap, but I think they're gonna be a good investment. All right, so you got a wax worm.
He's got little ones built right in there. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna be jigging. This is another thing. I've used these just when fishing for winter type fish in general. These little spring tips.
Oh, they're nice.
Oh my goodness, cheap investment. We're gonna see if it's really worth it while we're out here, but I think that might be an invaluable thing. Oh yeah, we're 4.3 feet right here. We got a mark about a foot off the bottom. Drop it down in.
Tip ups are still.
Oh my goodness, I got stolen already. There's fish here. I mean, this is just a general winter fishing thing, but live bait is definitely the key. Going small. Ice fishing, I don't think is really much different. I'm just watching that little spring tip. I have this just off the bottom, and I can see there's fish just off the bottom here.
I could show you a trick if you wanted me, how I jig it.
Yeah.
It might help with that sensitive. So I go like this. Right?
We're learning.
I go like this down like that.
Yeah.
Like you have two ways of doing it.
Yeah, that's true.
But I usually just drop it all the way down.
Yep, I dropped it all the way and then let it up, pulled it up like 6 inches.
Yeah.
I was just watching that spring tip is what I was doing.
Yeah, and that might work, but I don't know. I just feel like that.
I guess we can do a little trial and error, figure out which one's better.
It's like double haul.
Yeah, I
You know
gotcha.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think
I'll do a little trial and error
Yeah.
and figure out which one works better for me.
Good. I like to go in there.
Oh, I got bumped.
No, you?
Oh man, Bob's got one. Man.
I'll stock your hole.
Let's see what your depth is. 6 feet. Here's what Bob's hole's looking like. Brought the fish finder over here. He has about 1.5 feet more than I do, and he has a lot of weeds down there on the bottom. There's a mark. That's a fish. I'm gonna go grab a chunk off my chunk of the worm off my tip up, because that's not doing anything, and see if that does any better on the jigging rod. Little chunk of worm. I'll dead stick it. Just gonna leave that sitting there. I'm going to attempt to go drill another hole. We'll see how that works out for me. Hopefully better than the last 2 times. My second attempt was better than my first, but not much better. So someone had a hole here. Gonna see if I can just drill in this person's hole. We'll get back to you on how that works out for us. All right, well, I'm almost done this hole. It's going a lot better than the previous 2. Those techniques that I was figuring out on that last hole, as I was telling you guys, they're definitely working. It's still not easy, but I'm getting it. And while I was doing that, we, as Bob said, experienced my first ever ice grown. A lot of times, that's not anything to be concerned about. It's either just slight melting, or in many cases, it's actually ice growing and expanding. So, yeah, I kind of just backed up from what I was doing, stood still, spread my legs out a little bit, and took it. None of the ice really moved. It kind of just made a sound. And yeah, you got to be ready for those things, and you got to be understanding that it's not the end of the world and nothing's more than likely going to happen. And even if it does, that's why we got these. There you go. There was another one. Just about through this hole. Nothing really moved, nothing shifted, so I'm still feeling pretty good. I'm super close to being through this hole. Another successful hole. Another difficult hole, but it was successful. By the way, if you guys are curious about the fish finder I'm using while out here on the ice, I have an entire video dedicated to it, more specific to what it does for me on the kayak. But it's the same piece of equipment. It's doing all the same things. It's just in a little shack now, or shuttle, I guess, is the technical term. Super, super good piece of equipment. It's a pretty cheap fish finder, and it does pretty well. Super, super shallow. 1.9 feet. That's not great. Maybe something's down there, but I'm gonna drill yet another hole. I will return. I'm definitely more tired than I was to begin with, but the holes are still going faster, which means my technique is definitely improving. Got to scoop this one out. This one has to be at least 4.5 feet, which is kind of where I want to be as far as the depth. Alrighty, I'm guessing 5 feet. 2.3. What in the actual world? Oh my goodness. All right, well, I'll dead stick it here. Gonna go drill yet another hole. In the meantime, I'm gonna stick a tip up in one of these other holes This is the deepest hole out of all the ones I've drilled thus far. This is like 4.7, something like that. So we're gonna give this one a shot. All right, that tip up's set. All right, finally got this one drilled. This is definitely gonna be my last one of the day. I've drilled 5 now. This is right next to where Bob's been catching them in the shack all day.
I'm gonna slide the shack over.
We're gonna see what this looks like. 6.1 feet, some weeds on the bottom. This is where we're gonna exist for a little bit.
Pick up the tent and walk it over to your hole. That's real easy.
Let that sit there as I go set up the final tip up. Got all my lines in, 3 tip ups and my rod, all rocking and rolling. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Oh yeah. Oh, definitely just had one. Oh my goodness. Drop it right back down. That was the best bite of the day by far. I've only had 2, so it doesn't take much to be the best. But that was definitely it. Oh, I'm getting nipped. Oh man, missed him again. There's one down there that's hungry. Definitely just a bluegill, but I will take it. Oh. Getting nipped. Yep. Come on. Yeah, baby. Yep. First fish through the ice of my life. That's a hybrid too. Pumpkin seed bluegill hybrid. That's a cool one to have as your first fish through the ice.
Is that a pumpkin seed?
Pumpkin seed bluegill hybrid. Yeah.
What the heck? I've been catching nothing but bluegill in that hole right there.
I got something interesting. That's my first one. He ate that deep. I let him eat it for a while because I kept missing him. Yeah. I'm gonna have to get the forceps. Hold on there, buddy. I'll get you undone. All right, here he goes. Yep, just the worm. Go down the hole. There he goes. See you, buddy. No, you didn't see him on the fish finder. He kind of went that way. That would have been cool. Let's get another one. We're ready to roll for round 2. There's a lot of fish on my screen right now. Let's drop them down.
I put the rest of my sandwich down my hole. It's 5 feet over there.
What I learned from that fish is I have to let them eat it a little bit. That's kind of typical for winter fish. They don't really inhale it on the first go at it because they're so lethargic. But I can't let them eat it too long or else I'll throat hook them like I did that last fish. So got to find that middle ground here. Hopefully there's another one down there. I mean, there's others on the screen, but that doesn't mean they necessarily want to eat. Got one biting at it. This spring tip is definitely the way to go. I'm seeing stuff on here that I like no way to feel I had them. Like, this is definitely the way to go. If you don't have a spring tip, I think Bob's little line trick he was showing us earlier is definitely a good thing to try, but the spring tip is the juice, man. So we are definitely learning what type of gear is beneficial, especially for beginners. I feel like you don't really need much. This is a medium light rod, and medium lights in general are pretty good for almost anything. You can do catfish and stuff with them. It's a little bit underpowered, but you can pull it off. Bass is fine. It's a little bit heavy for panfish, but with one of these spring tips, you definitely have the sensitivity. I'd say this setup I've got going on is pretty good. Medium light rod with a couple tip ups, and you can put some good work in. An auger, you could do it with a hatchet. That's what Bob has going on over there. The hatchet definitely could work, but I think the auger is also a good way to go. Whatever you can get a hold of. If you can get hold of an auger, it's definitely going to make The whole process a little bit nicer. 6-inch auger do really good work, I imagine. And then just some basic jigs stuff. Don't have to get too fancy with it. Do some live bait and see what you can do. Just get out there. Yeah, Bob was out here much earlier. I had midterms today, so I could only come out around noon. Bob was catching quite a few before I got here. The action has certainly slowed down a little bit. There you go, Bob's on.
That's a good fish. That was YouTube drag setting.
Yep, YouTube drag is right.
You proud of me, Brad?
Oh, stock him back in this hole.
Stock your hole up. You sure? It's good.
There you go. Boom.
That's what I do for my...
Oh boy. Little bit of wind. Little bit of wind.
Little bit of wind here, guys.
Oh. Hit it again. Hit it again. Come on. Come on. You're a little wimpy fish. You hit me, and you won't come back.
That fish is probably right between our two holes, like, oh, what's he got?
Across the street we have McDonald's, but I'm at a Wendy's.
It's gotta look so weird, because there's gotta be...
One could have been a fluke. I need to get 2. All right, I'm gonna put the finder in here. I'm gonna try out Bob's shack. Never ever used a shack. Let's give this a shot. Get in here. Oh my gosh, it's warm. All right, people. Mission Discover's in the tent. Oh, you got fish.
It's cold out here.
Yeah, I know. I come in here and say, oh, it's warm. You go out there. Oh, it's cold. We're not lying. This is a piece of gear that you're not going to need the first time you go. But if you go consistently, this would be nice. Oh, definitely just got hit. Oh yeah, it's nice in here. Look at that, you guys can see it. Huh.
I've never seen technology on this channel.
There's Bob's camera, he's live up there. I got a little wind knot type thing, I'll pull that out. Deal with that for a second. It is important to take into consideration that this tangle was not the only one I had. Since you're vertical dropping and not casting, with a spinning reel in cold weather, you're definitely going to have some tangles. You just got to be patient, and especially with cold fingers, make sure you take your time to get it out. So water temp is below freezing, which is...
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, I guess it's good, because it means it's not melting. At least from the bottom, it's not melting. 31.46 degrees is the water temperature.
Tip up.
Which one? All right. Okay. Tip up. Nope. No. Oh boy. Just a worm. It looks like there was a teeth mark that went through it. Pickerel. Oh man. This is the deepest tip up. You want me to chuck him in on this one, or? All right, so there was a tooth mark in that worm, so I took that off. Bob gave me his last minnow. We're gonna drop it down on this tip up, see what we can do. Hopefully that was in fact a pickerel. It kind of looks like it was based upon our tooth mark, but we'll see. I'm gonna drop him right down there. All right, we'll give it a shot. It's got a minnow on it. We'll see what happens. Back at the shack, drop it down. There's still a couple fish chilling around 3 to 4 feet, it looks like, on the finder. So one more fish, I don't care what it is, give me one more. Regardless of how many fish I caught, this was a nice little first trip out on the ice. Got to learn some things, got to catch a fish, which is better than a lot of people do on their first ever trip, so that's good.
That's why I bring my other hatchet.
Now I'm like tip up happy. I keep looking out. Oh, there we go, fish on. Boom. Second one of the day. He's also kind of got hooked. That one's a lot bigger. There you go. Look at that. Second ever ice fish. This one was caught in the shack. Let him go. Get back down there. There you go, buddy. So what's interesting about that last fish, which kind of makes sense, yet again going with the whole fish are sluggish in the winter, I wasn't even paying attention. And then I looked down and I'm like, wait, what's happening?
Sometimes like I'll twitch, I'll be jerking it, and then I'll just sit it in that little holder, and that's when it'll get hit.
Yep. And I mean, same thing over there. I really wasn't working it much. I was just kind of doing little jigs and then kind of letting it sit there, and it hit it while it was sitting there. Don't overwork it. That's what I'm learning. It's a big thing in general when you're fishing in the winter, but especially when you're on the ice and you're jigging up and down. I feel like if you jig it up and down too much, it just looks so unnatural because things don't really do that all that much. So kind of just light working, then kind of let it sit there. Don't make it too bouncing up and down because it just doesn't look natural and the fish won't hit it. Big lesson from today. Good to have two on the board. A pickerel or really anything on the tip up just to get the experience really using the tip up would. I don't care if I catch any more fish on this. I mean, I'm happy with what I have, but if I caught a fish on the tip up, I really would be about as happy as I could be after my first day of ice fishing. Another thing I'm kind of learning here is that kind of always have to be aware that you are still on the ice, because the more time you're out here and the more you sit here without hearing weird ice noises, you start to forget that you're sitting on top of water. But I still have my picks on, and you always got to keep reminding yourself that because you don't want to get complacent and then have something bad happen. Leave that dead stick right there. Pull up the two far tip ups, leave the one that got hit, and then I'm gonna hole hop between those. Drop it in here, just test it out for a minute or two at each hole. So that hole's freezing up a tad. It's at least nice to know the hole's freezing more than it's melting, or the ice is freezing more than it's melting. So this is so shallow in here, I'm essentially sight fishing. I can see my bait down in the hole. I don't know if you guys can see it, but that's all the deeper it gets right here. See if this is the same. Oh yeah, can see the bottom down here too. This is even shallower. This is also giving me some good perspective here about what I was talking about earlier with how much action you're truly giving it. A little jig gives it way more action than you probably realize. You're probably making it look super unnatural if you're jigging it up and down a ton and doing it constantly. Just little jigs and then kind of let it sit still. I'm gonna try these holes that Bob's tip ups were in. Just kind of throwing the kitchen sink at these fish right before we head out of here. That wraps up my first ever ice fishing trip. It was definitely a good time. Thanks to Bob from Anyfin Is Possible for hanging out with me out here. He would have been out here anyway, but he showed me the ropes. Was my safety buddy, if you will. We had a good time. I got two. He was smashing them before I got here. The action slowed down a little bit, but I got on them, and I definitely learned a lot on my first ever trip. I'm gonna catch you guys back at the house, and we're gonna talk over a few more of the things that I learned before I close this video out. Before I give my closing remarks, I do want to reiterate that above all, safety is of the utmost importance. You have to do whatever you can to stay safe out there on the ice before you partake in an adventure like this. With that being said, I do have a couple closing things to say. First of all, one thing that I haven't yet mentioned throughout the video is that I think familiarity with the body of water you're fishing is really, really important. First of all, if you're familiar with the lake, you know where there are places with current or possible structure that could cause weaknesses in the ice, thus making it easier to stay safe. You then don't have to drill as many holes to figure things out. And let me tell you, you don't want to drill a lot of holes if you don't have to. And additionally, if you already know the lake, it makes it easier to get it done with this less fancy gear. You don't really need a sled if you can just make a beeline right to where the fish are, and makes it doable even if you don't have all the tip-ups. Just one rod will work if you know you're on top of the fish. Additionally, there are some things in this learning experience that simply can't be portrayed in a video. For example, you really can't be sure how you're going to react when the ice starts making sounds until you actually get out there. And finally, ice fishing is a really unique experience. It's probably not going to be the best bite you've ever had in your life, and it may be a little bit uncomfortable. But as Bob and I were talking about, it really is about the experience and getting out there with other people and having a good time. There's nothing out there that can truly substitute for ice fishing as far as a unique fishing experience, and it's definitely something I would recommend. With all that being said, that's all I'm going to have for you guys in this video here today. I really hope you enjoyed it and possibly learned something from it. If that's the case, I would really appreciate you hitting the like button and possibly thinking about subscribing if you haven't, because I've got more informational and educational outdoor content just like this coming your way real soon. God bless, and I'll see you next time.